decide to go to law school? Was there a person who influenced you, or their life events that influenced you?
Thanks, Jim. As Jim said, my name is Carlos. I didn't always want to be a lawyer. Originally, when I came with FGCU, I wanted to go into law enforcement. There was a degree, which no longer exists, called criminal justice. 2 or 3 of my professors were judges in town, and I really took towards the law classes. And they said, you know, you can really become a lawyer. You take to the law, arguing, logic, philosophy. It mixed philosophy and history, which I really enjoyed. I wasn't one for chemistry. And a combination of FGCU's professors and meeting these judges that said you can do it was a combination of me becoming interested in practicing law.
Okay. Mike.
Growing up, I had a close friend of a friend who was an attorney. He was a family law attorney, and also ran a general practice, and I always looked up to him. I didn't intend, when I first came to Florida Gulf Coast University to go to law school, I thought I was going to be an English professor someday, until a couple of my English professors talked me out of it. But I did have a few friends, Jim being one of them, who were in this fledgling group in '99 called the Legal Eagles. And everybody kind of pulled their resources and would take the practice LSATs and kind of study together and get ready for it. And a couple of friends who were doing that, I helped them study one time. It was always something that I thought about, was incredibly interested in. After talking to some people and then actually meeting a couple of attorneys in town and spending a day or two with each of them, it was something that I wanted to look into. And so I took the LSAT and I said, well, we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, thank you. And B.
I did not originally plan to go to law school. I went to undergraduate school, thought I would be a psychologist, help people, and then life happened. And 5 kids, and 20 years later, I went back to school, got my undergraduate degree in legal studies, and in school people would say, have you thought about law school? Have you thought about law school? And I said, no, I'm just here to get that piece of paper. And I got out of school and I worked as a paralegal, and I realized I can do this. So I draft the papers and somebody else signs them. I can do that. So there was a professor I had in undergrad. She called me after about a year and said, it's time for you to go to law school. It's time for you to start studying for the LSAT. And I had not really thought about law school because I was a first-generation college student. I knew absolutely nothing about anything. Where's the money going to come from? You know, where am I going to live? We have 5 kids, you know. So those were really deterrents. But I had someone who said, you can do this. And so I'm like, well, what do you got to lose? So I took the LSAT, I got in, and here I am.
Great. Well, thank you all. We'll start, if that's okay with you, B. We'll start with you and go back the other way this time. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided you should do the type of law you wanted to practice, and maybe explain where in the process that happened? Did you decide before you went to law school that you were going to do, for example, workers' comp defense or personal injury or whatever it is that we do? What led you to the area that you practice in, and when did you come to that decision?
When I went to law school, as I said, I had worked as a paralegal. I practiced, or I worked as a paralegal in public works, but it didn't sound really exciting. So I said, you know, people issues, employment law. I think I want to do that. So I went off to law school, and the first year they give you what classes you're going to take. You don't get to choose. But after that, my focus was primarily on areas that related to employment law. So when I got out, I got a job with a firm that practiced employment litigation, and I did that for about a year and a half and said, I don't like that. Because I kept getting these sexual harassment cases. And it was very great. He looked at me that way, you know. And how do you, decipher that? And it was just, I said, well, I did good in contracts. Contracts is pretty black and white. So there was an opening back at the same place where I had done my paralegal work, and I started doing contracts. But when I went off to school, I chose law school because when I finished my bachelor's degree, I didn't want to have to go back and get a master's in this and a master's in that. And I knew with law school, at least I would just have to do CLEs if I changed my mind and decided to go a different route. That I wouldn't have to go back to school for years to change my career path. So it was, very flexible in order, allowed me some flexibility in changing my mind if I so chose.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So Mike, what led you to your practice area and when?
Well, I went to law school when I was 30. I was in my late 20s when I got out of the military and finished up my degree here at FGCU. So I looked at it from two different ways. Number one, I wanted to focus on something in law school where I could get a job as soon as I got done. That was the most important thing. So I looked at it from that perspective. You're going to hear people, if you go to law school, the first year of law school will say, I don't know what I want to do. And that would have driven me crazy. I wouldn't have been able to handle that because while you can't choose your classes your first year of law school, there's a lot of things that you can learn about in whatever concentration you choose while you're taking those classes. So I actually met with a few attorneys around town. My mother had been a registered nurse for over 20 years, and I'd always been interested in the medical aspect of things. And after meeting with some attorneys, I thought maybe I'd do some form of either personal injury, med mal, or workers' comp. Then I made the decision that I did not want to practice a type of law where my success in trials would be based on people who didn't know how to get out of jury duty. So I decided that I wanted to do a type of administrative law, so I could go to what's called bench trials. When I do trials of workers' comp, it's just in front of a judge who's the fact finder. And so there's not really an element of trickery that some people would believe happens in jury trials. There's not a lot of confusion. We have a very knowledgeable person, and it allows for a lot less indecision about what the outcome of the case is going to be. After making that decision, then I went to law school. And I made sure that after I took that first year's classes that I took any class that would help me do what I'm doing now. But most importantly, it allowed me to do some clerkships and internships while I was in law school so that I could go back to the number one reason, which was to get a job right when I got out.
Thank you for that. And now, for a different perspective about the jury system, Carlos, tell us about your trickery.
I'm not going to take the bait, Jim. Does everybody understand there's different areas of the law? In other words, I have friends that do criminal defense, and they literally go to jail to meet their clients, and there's attorney conference rooms, and they take notes of their client's version. There's corporate law. I just got an email the other day saying that Hertz, right down the road, they're hiring lawyers to opine on international contracts. Something really big here in Southwest Florida. Wills and trusts. There's different areas of the law. When I was in law school, I'm the opposite of Mike McCabe. I didn't know what area of the law. I just knew that a law degree is very flexible. You can do a lot with it. And at that time, the real estate market, you have to realize this was 2000. Real estate was getting hot. And like Mike said, I took some courses to emphasize in real estate. So I'm like, wow, this is a good thing to get into. The dot-com collapse had just crashed. I don't know if any of you here remember the dot-com bust. But I remember thinking real estate's interesting. There will always be land. And so so I started taking these real estate classes, and then I clerked at a real estate law firm, and I hated it. I hated it. And I distinctly remember being in law school and thinking, all right, I'm gonna have to read case law and stay up to date. What sparks my interest? Stories about cops and robbers, corporate governance, in other words, filing Securities Exchange Commission. What stories really interest me? And personal injury and wrongful death always interested me because it's an interesting story as to what happened. It's like trying to put and find the pieces of the puzzle together. And I was a criminal prosecutor because a lot of personal injury and personal injury defense firms, they want somebody that has and that have what's called the courtroom spine, somebody that can stand up in the courtroom, make arguments that are intelligent and cogent. And so I was a criminal prosecutor to try and get that courtroom spine. And then I had a case, I referred it to Mr. Parvey, and he and we spoke about the evidence. He's been practicing personal injury for 43 years. He was board certified in 1985, prior to many of you probably being born. And I thought, this is a great mentor. He and I have been together 9 years, and I've loved every minute of it. When that phone rings, I don't know what story I'm going to hear. And that's what got me into personal injury.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. By the way, just from so how many people here have a parent or parents who are lawyers? Just out of curiosity. We have one family member who's a lawyer. So, okay. So we've got, just so we see the context, because I think a lot of what we're hearing today from our panel is that, and I'm the same way, I didn't even know a lawyer. Whoever advertised on TV, Bruce L. Shiner. You know him. Is he still advertised?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Bruce L. Shiner. Okay, Carlos, can you just kind of take us through what the application process was like? We're going to talk about the LSAT in a moment. The application process, what it was like, and how did you decide where to apply to school? We'll start with Carlos and then come down the line.
I went to Barnes & Noble and bought one of those LSAT books. And in the beginning of one of those LSAT books, the beginning chapters kind of walks you through the process of what law schools look at. It's my understanding that law schools looked at your GPA and your LSAT score. And I literally bought one of those LSAT books at Barnes & Noble, sat down and read it. And Jim earlier just mentioned he struck upon a nerve when he said he didn't know where I couldn't afford to go to those Barbary classes. I remember my parents being like, hey, here's some money, go to Barbary. I mean, I didn't know lawyers. You have to have that desire to pick up that book, study it, and figure out how to get into that school. I applied to a bunch of schools. I got into St. Thomas. I was literally selling luggages at the Bell Tower when I got a phone call from my mom saying, we have a message on the answering machine that you got into St. Thomas University. And I said, all right, well, I asked my boss, can I borrow a luggage? Because I'm going to need it for clothes. And he said, sure.
All right. I don't know how you're going to top the luggage story, but Mike, tell us about what the process was like for you in applying, and also what made, obviously you ended up at UF, but where all were you looking? What led you to UF?
Well, I know the process is a little bit different now, but generally it's kind of a clearinghouse where you enter all your information into a database, whether it's your GPA and your references and your experience and any other things that you can put on your resume when applying to law school. What I did was I wanted to get into the best law school that I could get into and that I could afford. I was responsible for my own education. And I made the decision at the time that unless I could get into Florida or Florida State, who at the time were the only two public law schools, and they were a quarter to a third of the price of many of the private schools, that if I couldn't get into those schools, I probably wasn't going to go to law school. I decided to get into workers' comp, which isn't something where you start at 6 figures when you get out of law school, and so I was trying to be reasonable. And so I focused on that. And I focused on padding my eventual application, whether it was doing free work, filing for a weekend at a law firm, or whether it was just asking attorneys for their advice. And I'll tell you this right now, you won't find an attorney practicing in this area who isn't willing to tell you their opinion on something. So don't be afraid to ask attorneys for their advice and their experiences. We all enjoy doing this for our fellow Eagles, but all attorneys will give you a short bit of time and give you some attention. And what you get in return for that is they know who you are, they know that you're interested, and that they know that you're doing what most people aren't doing, which is planning ahead and trying to find things out. And put those references down, and if they happen, some of them happen to be Florida alumni or Florida State alumni or St. Thomas University alumni, that can't hurt your application. So that's how I went about it. Luckily, I got into Florida, so it was an easy decision for me.
Great, thank you. V.
For me, I don't know how I came across it, but there was a list of most of the law schools in the country, and they were all separated by categories as far as their stats. And so I'm looking for the best that I can afford to get, or places that I would like to go to. So I looked at Florida, Florida State. I looked at Stetson because they had an exceptional reputation for litigation. And I looked at Virginia because they have an excellent reputation. And I applied to all of those. I wanted to apply to more, but applications cost money. And then I started working on my personal statement. I believe Florida just asked for a personal statement. Virginia had a question to which you had to write something to explain. So I'm trying to write something that would have me to stand out, to show that I add diversity of thought and presence, and that I could add something to their institution. And still didn't have any money to go to school. And I figured, I'll figure that out after I get in. So I applied to schools, and then I looked at housing. Because I had a family, I looked at schools that had family housing. And I looked at those schools that would give me an answer and allow me to apply for housing before I knew I had been accepted into school. Because some of them you can't even apply you can't apply for housing until you've been accepted. And I needed to apply for housing because there wouldn't be much time between the time I got accepted and to apply for housing, and by that time, everything was gone. And I wanted university housing because I know everything is included in my rent. So I'm not going to have to worry about a utility bill, a phone bill, all these. I just have to pay my rent. So I was very focused on the cost, and my family did play an important role in where I went to school. If you didn't have family housing, you were not interested.
Did you live in family house, student housing in Florida?
I did.
Where was it?
It was down the street on 13th.
Tanglewood Apartments?
That's it.
See? I lived in student housing too. I had a wife and a son when I went to Florida, and we lived in McGuire Village. And the best thing about living in McGuire Village, you got a parking pass for the on-campus housing, and there was an on-campus housing directly across from the law school, so I would just always park there. All right, the LSAT. Does everyone here know what the LSAT is? Anyone not know what it is? So the LSAT is the Law School Admissions Test. It is something that everyone has to take. The rules are quite different than like the SAT, at least when I took it. Remember, I think when you took the SAT, you didn't get penalized for a wrong answer. On the LSAT, you do. Most law schools do not take your highest score. They take an average. So if you take it the first time and do really poorly, and then you take it later and do really high, they take an average. So what's the lesson? Do really good the first time. So let's ask our experts here. How they, because they all went to good law schools. V, if you, we'll just go right down the line again, if you'd be so kind, V, what did you do? What was your process for preparing for the LSAT? Did you take a class? Did you study at all? Did you just do a cold? How did you handle that?
I went to a Kaplan introductory an information session, and I never went back because I could not afford it. It sounded great, and I really needed it, but I couldn't afford it. And a friend of mine who was also planning to go to law school changed her mind, and she gave me all of her study materials. And so I studied on my own to take the LSAT. It just took a bunch of practice courses, practice tests, and read the books over and over again. And that's about it.
Very good. Mike, what was your experience?
Well, like I said before, the legal eagles back in '99, we kind of all got, at that point in time, we could actually pay for it and order practice LSAT exams.
And by the way, this is a real group, the Legal Eagles. We were like all three in it. So I don't know, you guys, if you were smart, you'll reform that group.
And
Okay.
everybody, I went and bought the Princeton Review book, somebody else bought the Kaplan book, and there was another one, I can't remember the name, and we kind of passed them around. And, there's two people that I was English majors with, and we'd sometimes, okay, let's do one. And we'd all, one of the three, and we'd look through it, and we'd take a look at it afterwards. What you want to find out before you ever take it the first time is you want to find out what the test is like, because you want to get over that so you're not surprised, because it's a time test and you're not going to finish. Very rarely are people going to finish the LSAT. You want to be able to use those books like the Princeton Review or the Kaplan thing, so you can avoid paying $3,500 for the class where someone's just going to read that to you. Put it on a PowerPoint presentation. And figure out, am I good at the argument questions? Do I have trouble with the logic puzzles? Because when you're taking the test, and you know that you don't do very well on one particular type of question, you want to be able to identify it and skip it. Get to all the questions that you know you do well in, whether it's the comprehension, whether it's the arguments, whatever it is. You want to get through those, you want to answer as many as possible, and then you can circle back. But Jim's right. Most places aren't going to take their best score. They're going to average. And so you don't want to just wing it and go see what it's like. Although I have heard, and you can correct me if you guys have heard differently, that some people have gone in and taken the test and then just not turned it in because they haven't felt that they've done a good job. I don't know if you can still do that, but I actually know a couple people who did that. But you've got to take advantage of all the materials as possible. This is something that you should be spending. There's two freshmen in the back. It's something that they should start taking those tests, practice tests now. You really want to, before you take it, you want to be prepared.
Okay, freshman, how many of the tests have you taken on? I'm kidding, don't answer that. Okay, Carlos, what did you do?
The same. I can't add to what these panelists have said. It's similar to preparing yourself eventually 3 years down the road for the bar exam. You have to know your brain. You have to know how you think. There are test-taking techniques. Take, for example, when you're taking a test and you see a big reading block and you know you're a slow but methodical reader, they say, look at the question stems and know the issues that are in the question stem before you spend time reading this big block if you know you're a slow reader. And then practice timing. Because timing versus the amount of time they give you to take the test is huge. And it's the same principles that are used when you take the Florida bar exam. It's all or nothing with the Florida bar. You pass it, you don't. You're either a lawyer or not. But what they just said, grab a book, take it.
Well, and the one thing that I'll add to what everyone said is that it's a very hard test, and it's not knowledge-based. It's not like you can go and study about a bunch of antonyms and synonyms like you can. It's testing how your brain works. And it's, at least for me, and maybe I'm just not that smart, it was very hard for me to finish in the time allotted. So you have to take these things over and over again to figure out I've only got 30 minutes to get through 35 questions, and it's taking me 40 minutes to get through 35 questions, and they're going to hold it against me if I'm guessing and guessing wrong. So I think all of this is good advice as far as just practicing goes. Now, what I'd like to, so now we've been admitted to law school, we did great on the LSAT. I want to talk about what law school is like. And I'm going to be like Jerry Springer. I'm going to go into the audience here. You took a business law test, class, right? How was your grade calculated in that class? What was it based on? Michelle?
Exams.
How many exams per semester?
2.
Did you have homework?
No.
Class participation?
No.
Okay. Who knows how law school is? How do you get a grade in law school? One test. One test at the end of the semester. How many points do you get for showing up to class? None. How much do you get for participating? None. How much do you get for being a good citizen? 0. What if you're like an exceptional student in class and they look at you and they say, oh, that's a good person? It doesn't count because your grade is a number. You're a number. You don't even have your name on the test. They don't even know it's you. It's literally just a one test at the end of the semester. So there's no pop quizzes, there's no anything. So with that in mind, Carlos, starting with you, coming back down the line, explain to us, first of all, the pressure, as best as you can, that you felt taking law school exams, at least initially, and what you did during the semester to prepare for. We're talking about a 3 or 4 month semester with nothing, and then all of a sudden your whole grade rides on the test at the end.
I'm going to start with the end of the story, then go to the beginning of the story. The end of the story is St. Thomas University School of Law in Miami. It's about 2 blocks away from Chili's. And everybody knows that Chili's has 2-for-1 drinks. It got to a point where the management at Chili's contacted the law school and said, can you give us your exam schedule because you're packing the restaurant and the bar when the exams are over with kids that are just, getting inebriated beyond belief. So I tell you, that was what the stress was like, going into manager stress that way. That's not my suggestion. I tell you that to tell you this.
Okay.
Kate,
Okay, V, let's start with you. Go ahead, Carlos.
Kate, the law school is logic, philosophy, and history, and it's a bunch of, knowing the black letter rule of law. I will forever know that a contract, you have to have offer and acceptance. What's an offer? A manifestation of the willingness to enter into a binding agreement. You have to learn it. I disciplined myself to make index cards. I'd write the case name on the opposite side of the case law, issue, analysis, conclusion. My parents came to visit me and they took a picture. My cards were about this high. But I knew my brain, and I knew my brain responds well to flashcards. And whether it's coffee, spending to 2 in the morning, I found that one thing that helped me study was a friend of mine who Mike actually knows. She and I would get into arguments about the rationale of certain decisions. Did the court make a right conclusion? I remember a buddy of mine who was from Kentucky said, well, of course the court made the right decision. The court made a ruling. And the law professor was like, no, you can disagree with the court ruling. It's like, I don't understand. And what you're doing is you're learning rationale. You're learning, was the analysis fair and proper, just, and then you have to learn how to try and apply it. First year of law school, you do a tremendous amount of reading, you drink a lot of coffee, and you work hard. Bottom line.
Okay, so at St. Thomas there's a lot of coffee and beer.
Yes.
Okay. No, Mike, no, sorry. Mike, and also I forgot to describe this. Can you explain to us, as part of your answer, if you'd be so kind, like what a law school exam looks like? Is this like a multiple choice test? Like, explain to us what a law school exam is like, if you would.
Well, it depends on what type of class you're taking. Generally, your first year classes are all essay-based. You're given a fact pattern, you're asked questions, you're tested on your knowledge of the black letter law, or the elements of the contract, or the elements of a tort. You're given points for spotting various issues in the fact pattern, for listing out the elements, for explaining, if you can remember, what the general leading cases have held for precedent, and then explaining, they'll have, sometimes after doing that, they'll have specific questions for you to address. Sometimes it'll just be here's the fact pattern, explain.
When he says fact pattern, he means a story.
Yeah,
And it's usually like in my experience, like a one-page story. And I don't know what your experience was. There's no right answer. You have to like explain what the plaintiff would say and explain what the defendant would say, and you're not allowed to reach a conclusion. In fact, they would hold it against you because you're not thinking about both sides of the argument. It was bizarre.
50 people in your class, or there's 100 people in your class. Not only is it just one exam, but generally it's graded on a curve. So if you've got 100 geniuses who all get between 93 and 100, there's only going to be a certain percentage of those who are going to get the A's versus the A minuses versus the B pluses, depending on how your school grades. So it's a lot of competition. A lot of people aren't prepared for it. A lot of people don't see it coming. You'll start to feel it the first 2 or 3 months. And the way you'll feel it is you will see some of your classmates get asked questions in class and they are not prepared. And they are brutally brought to task by the professor. Jim will kind of does a very good explanation of the Socratic method. Who knows that? Who knows what that is? Go ahead.
Well, Socratic method is whenever they teach by just asking questions, and usually it's some poor student, which is actually an advantage then because you know that they can't hold it against you on the exam because they don't know your name on the exam. So I'm just telling you.
So you go home and you read 87 pages of property law. And then you come in and they say, okay, we're going to talk about case number, this case. Mr. McCabe outlined the facts of the case. You better have read it.
Yeah.
You better have outlined it. You won't have done it well enough until you've been severely embarrassed in class. There's a movie out there that none of you will have ever seen or probably heard of. It's about Harvard Law School
Paper Chase.
in the 60s called Paper Chase. Netflix it. Watch it. That will tell you a lot. Don't watch that Alicia, what's her name?
Oh,
Going to law school.
Witherspoon.
Witherspoon.
Legally
Don't-
Blonde.
Legally Blonde.
Don't watch it. Don't do it.
Legally
Wrong.
blonde
That's the paper
has no
chase.
bearing reality.
You're going to have to, in law school, in order to get to that point where you're sitting in front of an exam and you're not pulling your hair out, and you think you have a chance to maybe get a B or a C, you've got to start that first day. It's all about time management. You're not going to be able to have it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've seen the paper chase, and it was all books and people taking notes. When I started law school, it was optional whether you should get a laptop. Now at Nova Law School, I don't know about St. Thomas, but I know it's mandatory that you have a laptop and you take your notes via computer and technology. It's just changed dramatically.
It has. And before we get to V, just to make a note about what Mike said, when I was at the University of Florida, there were 100 people per section, so 100 people per class, and then you would all take an exam and it was on a curve. How many out of the 100 on the curve would get an A? Just shout out what you think the answer is. 13. We have a 13. Anyone higher, anyone lower? 10. 5 is the right answer. That gets the competitive juices flowing a little bit, and it's intimidating. If you are not ready for it, luckily I had a mentor, which hopefully you can all seek and find, to explain that to me beforehand, because when I first heard that, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, V, how did you get ready for this process of taking law school exams?
At the University of Florida, they had in the library a lot of old exams with the answers to questions that people wrote. So I would check those out. I would study them. I would answer them myself. But I looked at as many as I could. And then I went and met my professors. Went to their office, talked to them. You mind looking over my answer to this practice exam? And then I go back, what can you tell me? And I am trying to get in the head of my professor. What do they look for? What's important to them? How do they think? So that when I write out my answer, I give them what they're looking for. And so I did that a few times, as many times as They would allow me to, they never turned me away, and that helped me draft answers.
Let me
Wonderful. And Mike has
Let
something.
me add to that. The reason why they were always receptive and always would sit down and take the time with me is because she had put the time in and they could tell. Don't be part of that gaggle of first-year law students that pester the professors without spending the time and asking them thoughtful questions, which shows that you have put the time in. Because that takes away from your classmates. It makes sure classmates resent you. And what we haven't spoken about is you can't make it through law school on your own. You're going to need study partners. You're going to need people at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 days before the final, that you need to toss some ideas off of, that you've mixed up on a torts question, you don't quite get it, and you're going to rely on it. So definitely reach out to your professors, but make sure that when you do so, that you show them that you're informed and you're prepared, and they will. And they will often subconsciously tip you off to things that you didn't see were very important. And when you find out that they're important to your professors, well, you circle it in your outline and you think maybe that's going to be on the exam.
Well, and that's really good advice, because you have to get it out of your mentality, this idea that, you know, FaceTime matters. Being completely invested, like the example V gave, getting the old exams, putting in the work, and then asking the professor a question. I'll never forget, there was a guy in my first semester class. He asked a question in every class, trying to look smart. And his hand went up every day. And then we started the second semester, and his hand went up every day. And then we got our grades for the first semester. And he never raised his hand anymore. Because apparently his strategy of looking smarter in front of the professor, I guess, didn't work. Or maybe it did. I don't know, but he stopped asking questions. So, that leads us to our next situation, our next question. We'll start with D and then go down. What type of opportunities outside of the classroom are available or were available to you in law school? Be they internships, externships, working at a law firm, or is that type of stuff not really that available? What was your experience be?
I had a plan. My first year, fall, spring, I just went to school, made sure I did my homework, and classes. After that first year, you get to choose your own classes. And I decided that I would go to school that summer. So I would have more hours so that I would be higher on the list when it came time for my number so that I could register for classes. So that summer, while my friends were working and getting work experience, I went to summer school. And then I wrote for the Journal of Law and Public Policy, and I got on. Because coming out of law school, I have no experience. So what am I going to use to show people that they should hire me? Well, if I get on a journal, that means I know how to write. And so I got on that. I became an articles editor, so I know how to proofread. And then the next semester, I started working on the trial team. So I know how to work in a courtroom. So these things will say things that will get my paper past a first look-see. But that's how I spent my first summer.
Perfect. And just so everyone knows, there is no equivalent, I don't think, in undergraduate school. Like the Journal of Law and Public Policy, every law school has a journal where scholarly articles are written. And members of the student body are staff members on the journal, but there's an application process for it. So V had to write an article that qualified her to be on it. Tons of people, dozens and dozens of people applied, and only a few were selected. But it's a way to distinguish yourselves. So it's great on a resume trial team. These are the type of extracurricular activities that really impress employers. Mike, what was your experience?
Yeah, there's certainly, you've got the trial team, something that you could compete to get on. And I think second semester of your second year, same thing with moot court, just more of an appellate law process. The journals, writing on your journals. Obviously, if you want to get on the law review, typically the top, I think it was the top 5% of the first year law students automatically got on the law review. There were some remaining spots that you could compete for. Depending on where you go to law school, you're going to have externship possibilities different types of certificates that you can take a block of classes in. They'll also make you eligible for experiences, whether it's, there's a program at Florida from everything from criminal law, defense to prosecutor, to land use, to real estate, certain things like that. And then the rest of it, you're left to your own devices. I always say that, I mean, nowadays it's even tougher. When we went, I would say at Florida in 2002, 2003, about 40% actually got summer jobs at law firms. And I've heard it's a lot less now. About 40%, and out of those 40%, most of them paid okay. A few of them paid really well, a lot of them didn't pay much, and you're paying your rent in Gainesville. And you go to some other place, Orlando, for the summer. It's really not about money, it's about experience. And so, whether you're in Gainesville, Florida, or you're in Miami, or you're in Orlando, or you're in St. Pete or Tampa or anywhere, there's tons of attorneys out there. Don't rely on your law school's, what they call on-campus interviews, OCIs, where, for example, my law firm goes to Florida, Florida State, Miami, Stetson, because we have alumni from those schools, and they go in and they interview 50 law students, and maybe one will get an offer to work for us for the summer. Don't rely on that. It's not there. Go around, if you know you want to do family law, go meet an attorney, a family law attorney in town, and say, can I work for free for you a couple afternoons a week doing something that you don't want to do and something that I don't need to know the law to be able to do? And that's how you earn the type of capital where they're, you know what, I've got a research project. I'm mostly just reading and tabbing pieces of paper and putting together a folder. And that's where it's on you. You go out and create these situations. But you've got to have the initiative to do it.
Jim,
Yes.
sorry, can I add something?
Of course.
The second summer of law school, going into my third year, I got a summer internship at a firm in Orlando. And I found the firm by going through Martindale Hubble. I did a search. Martindale Hubble is a book that had all of the law firms in the country. And so I knew that I wanted to live in Orlando. I wanted a large firm with a small local office so that I could get paid a higher salary based on the size of the national firm. But I would be working in a small firm, which is more of what I wanted. So I went to Martindale Hubble. I want an employment litigation firm that has an office in Orlando, that has a national presence, and that's how I got my internship. And on that internship, they offered me a job so that I went through my last year of law school knowing that when I got out, I would have a job.
Okay, got it. Made the last year a lot easier, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay, Carlos.
My story is strikingly similar to the other panelists. One thing I did is St. Thomas had a book of alumni directory. I flipped to the section where it said Lee County, because keep in mind I live in Miami. And I saw a person that had a litigation boutique firm in Cape Coral. I'm from a small town in Cape Coral. And I called her out of the blue. I said, next time I'm in town, let's go out to lunch. She'll go out to lunch. I said, I have access to Westlaw to do legal research. And she said, my firm is growing. I'll pay you to do research if you send me a case law in return. This is a lot cheaper for me. I don't have to pay Westlaw subscription. I said, deal on. So she emailed me these issues, and I think she paid me $20 an hour, and that's what I did. That was one of my first summers. One of my last summers was a judicial internship with a federal judge in West Palm. Federal judges have lawyers that work for them called law clerks that read and write briefs, and they have law students attached to them that help them cut and paste case law. And you sit in the judge's chambers, which is a fancy word for office. The judge says, I remember when I had this one really complex case, there's tons of issues, and the judge sits down, and we're in her office with her full-time law clerks, which are lawyers and she said, I think this is the tail wagging the dog. Rule in favor of the tail. And the clerk said, okay, here you go, Carlos. And she said, just copy and paste from the winner's brief. And that's how the judge, I said, well, I don't understand. What does she mean, tail wagging the dog? And the clerk explained to me, it looks like that little person's trying to shake down the government, and the government's the dog, the tail can't wag the dog. And I'm like, got it. But that judicial internship was invaluable. I became friends with that judge, and she's now retired. But that was a phenomenal learning experience.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're down to our last question. Carlos will come back down, and we'll see if there's time for a couple of questions from the audience if we have any. Can you just each walk us through a typical day in your life? You've all been practicing for over 10 years now each. So you're not learning any more of the new things. You've all been doing it for a while. But Carlos, what's your typical day look like? And then we'll go to Mike and B.
There is no such thing as a typical day.
Okay,
Follow up on
I asked a bad question. Please
what Jim
help me out
said,
here.
what Jim said, you're no longer learning. We're no longer in an institution with grades. We're in an occupation where you have clients and you're giving advice and you're dealing with opposing counsel, judges, and clients. I'm always have this. Ask my wife. Between this and my iPad, at night, I have to give you at 10 o'clock at night, I'm returning clients' emails to let them know that I care. And you know why? Because I prioritize them over my paycheck. If I prioritize my paycheck, I should be Morgan Stanley guy, Raymond James, Dean Witter. Life is truly not fun, okay? It's only fun when you get to help people. I've had clients where I've resolved a matter and my fee was $100. I've had matters that I've resolved north of $6 million. So I've had everything in between. And let me tell you, between helping people, taking depositions, going to dealing with opposing counsel, some of my best friends on planet Earth are litigators that I have fought with. I fought fiercely with, where we're yelling at each other. But yeah, they're my best friends. Well, people are like, how can you do that? How can you say that? How can you do that? It's easy. You know why it's easy? Because you put truth first. And they know that. And you know that. And then you become best friends with your opposing counsel. His firm, Henderson Franklin, I fought his firm. And then his partners come to my house for my birthday party. I've had them over. I know it's Jim's question was a day in the life of my life. There really is no day in the life. I'm always talking to clients. I'm always talking to new clients. I'm always talking to insurance adjusters. Insurance adjusters are saying, this case is worth X, Y, Z. Yeah, but you didn't factor in loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life. You didn't factor in loss of capacity for future earning. You didn't factor in pain and suffering. Oh, you won't get that. Really? All right, I'll file a lawsuit. For 4 months, 6 months later, sometimes cases get resolved after the lawyer will educate the adjuster. So that's my life.
Okay. Thank you, Carlos. Mike, tell us about your life.
I spend my life, a good portion of my life talking to the same insurance adjusters because they're my clients. And I also educate them on the potential value of claims and whether or not they've made the wrong or right decision to deny a workers' compensation claim or to deny some recommended treatment. I was in Tampa this morning at 8 o'clock at a mandatory mediation at the judge's office, and the other side didn't show up. Or at least the claimant didn't show up. I talked to my client while we were there. We tried to resolve some issues with the other attorney. But like Carlos said, my clients are insurance adjusters, they're business owners, they're large corporate clients, they're small, tiny little mom and pops. Some of them are uninsured, so they don't even have the backing of an insurance company. And they're constantly sending me emails, they're calling me because, just like with Carlos's cases, whatever case is their case is the most important case to them. And if it's not the most important case to you, they'll eventually figure that out and get a new attorney. And so try to prioritize my clients' priorities for them. I explain to them to start thinking with their heads more than their hearts when you get into these types of situations on both sides of insurance defense and P&I and bodily injury. A lot of Carlos and my job is to get our clients to be reasonable and to see really what's going to happen, cost-benefit analysis. I probably spend 3 to 4 hours a day reviewing medical records. I don't rely on my staff to do it. I don't rely on paralegals to do it. Because ultimately I'm going to be taking the doctor's depositions and I'm going to want to know every nook and cranny of what was said, the nurse's handwritten note. I want to know the facts of the case as well as I can, and so I spend a lot of time doing that. Then I also run to the judge's office when they call an emergency conference. And I get out on the road, do some marketing for some potential new clients. It's more than a full-time job. One thing that I would impart on all of you is they call the law, the practice of the law, a legal institution, which connotes that there's an endless stream of work, and you just have to be smart and go to law school and get a degree and plug yourself into that and you'll have a job. None of that is true. Being a lawyer is being your own, in private practice. V's got a different experience here at FGCU. And in many cases, it's an enviable position that she's got. But when Carlos and I, you're your own little small business. You're responsible for bringing the work in. You're responsible for making yourself profitable at your firm. I work with 55 attorneys, but we don't, at the end of the year, pool all of our billing together and pat each other on the back and say, everyone's done such a great job. We have attorneys that are pulling in a large majority of the billing for the firm, and they're treated accordingly. And we have attorneys at our firm who are not pulling their weight because when the real estate went down, we had 9 real estate attorneys who are all now responsible for the national recession in real estate. When the dot-com boom went down, same thing happened. When the Med-Mal cuts went for attorney's fees, they decreased litigation. When attorney's fees for my practice area, the workers' comp were cut, that affected it. You are your own small business. You have to learn how to be the best attorney you can, but at the same time, you've got to market, you've got to schmooze, you've got to get on the road and give presentations to potential clients. You've got to have internet ads, and you've got to have great marketing techniques. And if you're not interested in that, and you don't feel that you're going to do well in that competitive scenario, then you need to look at the types of law that you don't have to do that. Government type work, criminal law either side, more transactional type work. Those are all the types of things that you really want to know as much about when you're in law school. You can only learn that by meeting and interacting with attorneys.
Okay, V, in answering your question, explain to us, because a lot of us probably don't know what a general counsel is, who is your client, and then tell us what your day is like.
My client is the institution, but the institution is an inanimate object and operates through the people that work for the institution. But I operate in the best interest of my client, which may conflict with the actions that the people do. So a typical day, I learned when I was in private practice, the rule that sticks with me to this day. They required that I respond to phone calls within 24 hours of receiving. So if somebody calls me, I return their call within 24 hours. So even now, as in-house counsel, I don't have that. I still have people who call, who send emails, so I get up in the morning. I check my email before I leave the house. I check my calendar. And I respond to emails before I leave the house. I get to the office. I don't know. There may be somebody waiting for me. There may be a phone call that came into the office. I have to answer. There may be somebody who needs an answer on something right away. So I may have a plan. I may have a calendar, but it blows up. And it can be nothing like what I expected it to be when I left the house. So I go through my day, I return emails, I'm on the phone, I go to this meeting, that meeting. Sometimes I may have 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings. And then I'm still expected to do some work. I still have to write something, I still have to respond. And so I may be at the office 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock. I may have to respond to the EEOC, and in some cases, I've been here. When people are turning over in their beds, I'm still here 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I have something that's due to the EEOC by that day. And I have already gotten one extension, and I can't get another one. So my day can be sometimes hectic, sometimes not so bad.
Well, if you're ever tired that late at night, you can email Carlos and check his email a little late, he said just now. Anyway, okay, how big, by the way, is the legal department here at FGCU? How big is your staff?
Very small. There are 3 of us, including myself. We have the smallest staff within the state university system for schools. So it is very small. And in order to timely respond, you have to work longer hours. Your day may not necessarily end at 5 o'clock. So when it's 5 o'clock, that doesn't mean you get to go home because there's still work to be done.
Okay, so everyone kind of has a different experience here, but I think the overriding thing is, and I don't want to scare anyone, but it's just reality, this is a tough profession in the sense that you have to work a lot. I'm just telling you, if you're not someone who likes to work hard, this may not be the right thing. You just have to know that. And it starts in law school. You guys are probably all already high achievers, you're doing well in school. Law school's a grind, it's tough, working professionally is tough because, like V's example right there, if she has a project due tomorrow, she's going back to the office right now to finish it. She doesn't just get to go home because we had a nice little seminar here, so we had to get it done.